It is reported that a quorum does exist for the Public Enterprise Committee to commence business. Those in favor say aye. Adoption of those here present, starting with my humble self, Aliba Sala, the chair of the Public Enterprise Committee.
Honorable Muhammad Tawara, member.
Good morning, Honorable Sadiq Jao.
Good morning, Honorable Hafha, member specialist.
Good morning, Mr. Mondial, GPP.
Good morning, Bram Konjira, GPP.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and members. Salutal, Chairperson, Gamwork.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. My name is Omar Gay, the Director General of Gamwork.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman, Honorable members. My name is Alaji Babu Hajaba. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration. Thank you.
And the management of Gamwork. We started a process, and now we are heading towards completion by virtue of the fact that we should submit a consolidated report of our scrutiny ranging from 2015 to 2019. You would recall, before I put the question to members to consider, that the Gambia Agency for Management of Public Works had been submitting activity reports and financial statements until we assumed our responsibilities during the 2017 legislative year. We received representation that they were compelled to submit the report, but had not been doing so until they were compelled, because the agency does not conceive itself as a public enterprise. They prevailed on the committee to look into the matter because it was felt that what they were doing was due to executive directive, and they felt that the new dispensation would not operate with that kind of money. It is based on that appeal that the committee started to engage the agency with the view to come to something that would be justified to be the position and that no one would be able to question. Chair, we are meeting today to begin the process of finalizing the opinion of the committee, which must be expressed in the report that we will present to the Senate. So we would want to be guided by the evidence you give us, the evidence we have collected from other institutions like the Office of the Attorney General, especially the Office of the Solicitor General, who testified before the committee after submitting letters regarding the status of government. So it is important, Chair, that we put the information as we understand it, and then hear your reflection, so that ultimately we arrive at a consensus on the real status of Gamwork. Our understanding is dictated by the constitutional provisions and the statutes established regarding public enterprises. We've alerted our mind to section 175 of the Constitution, which states that public enterprises means anybody operates or any other body or institution wholly owned or controlled by the government. The Public Enterprise Act came earlier, and it appears that its objectives were restricted to commercial institutions serving as public enterprises, because what it says is means a corporation or any company whose equity is wholly owned by government or partially owned by government together with another government institution or wholly owned by a government institution. So it means that the Constitution broadens the definition, but essentially, when we started the exercise of taking evidence, we tried to understand the true nature and characteristics of government. And we have received evidence that Gamwork has a memorandum and article of association. So we have received copies of the memorandum and the article, and from the memorandum of association, we have gathered the owners of Gamwork, or those who have subscribed to the agency. And what we see is that it began the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, the National Youth Council, the Gambia Bar Association, and the Gambia Association of Local Government. We've seen two institutions that are related to government, which is the National Youth Council, which is a government subvented institution, and the Gambia Association of Local Government Authorities, which is an association of those at the local level. The other three are not government institutions. So we looked at the memorandum and what it seeks to do as registered under the Companies Act. And there we have seen that the fundamental objectives stipulated under paragraph 3 states that the objects to which the company is established are to have public works and services projects executed on behalf of the government of the Gambia, of the Republic of the Gambia, and other bodies and associations recognized to be in the public interest. So the key objective is to execute public works and service projects for the government of the Republic of the Gambia and any other association that aims to serve the public interest. So looking at that objective, And then finally, we also see some of the conditions attached to the exercise of its mandate, and key among those is the provision which states that every member of the agency undertakes to contribute to the assets of the agency in the event of the same wound up during the time that he is a member, and within 1 year afterwards, the payment of the debts and liabilities of the agency contracted before it ceases to be a member, and of the cost, charges, and expenses of winding up, and to the adjustment of their rights and contributions among themselves, such amount as may be required, not exceeding $1,000. Now, it says, if upon the winding up or dissolution of the agency, there remains, after the satisfaction of all its debts and liabilities, any property whatsoever, the same shall be given or transferred to the government of the Republic of the Gambia. So essentially, this is telling us that Gamwork is not just simply a private company aiming to serve its shareholders. Somehow, it is very much linked to public interest. So this created a dilemma for us. And when we raised the issue, what is Gamwork? Well, we were written to, and we have evidence on that, saying that Gamwork is an NGO, was intended to be an NGO. But then the evidence we received from the Office of the Attorney General is that, well, it cannot be considered to be an NGO because NGOs have another way of really being registered as NGO, and that is not the status of government. So clearly, Chair, we then entered into a chasm from which we hope you and your colleagues will help us to escape from. Because we see an institution which I am sure as we get, we didn't bother initially to go into detail, and if we get your cooperation, then it may not be necessary. But we went into a situation where, looking at Gamwork over the years, it appears that its main function has been to receive and execute, receive resources and execute projects in the public interest. So if that is really the intention and the objective, we could not fully comprehend why it would be in any way against the principles of the institution to render accounts in the public interest. It was felt by the committee that though the definition may not fill the real status that Gamwork has as per definition, but in terms of functions, it is actually functioning as a public interest institution. its origin appears to have that particular perspective, and its function does underscore such a perspective. So the question then is raised: should Gamworks have been rebranded a long time ago, and statues created for it after its success stories, maybe over the years, as an institution very much capable of actually delivering in terms of executing projects, and therefore giving another status as a public institution with degree of independence, so that they'll be able to continue to implement them. Maybe this is where your expertise would come, because those who appear to have subscribed to its memorandum of association do not appear to have any vested interest, per se, in receiving dividends from Gamwork. And it appears that somehow, maybe here you will be able to assist in the establishment of the association or the agency. There was desire for independence and non-interference, and desire for integrity, and consequently some of the key players in facilitating that independence and integrity were brought to bear to actually participate in the establishment of the agency. But over the years, looking at its functions, one may tend to feel that some reform is necessary, was necessary, maybe somehow could have been effected, if you do agree. Or maybe it's not necessary, it needs to be maintained in this particular structure and format. But then the question is, should it be given the monopoly that it has in the execution of government projects? So this becomes the question. Somehow, the nature and characteristic of the institution ought to change to be able to be given monopoly to execute government projects, or to take a more private sector image and in that sense compete in the market for the jobs that are given by the government. So somehow there needs to be a break that is clear and neat, and therefore escape the issue of public accountability. It has to become private, completely to escape public accountability. But as long as it is within those circles, then somehow public accountability needs to be put into operation. And we look at, in fact, the desire to ensure that wherever government have or has even limited, interest, well, public accountability is actually demanded by the Constitution. Looking at section 160, subsection 6, it says that where the government owns a minority interest in any company, the Attorney General, the Auditor General may exercise on behalf of the government its power to inspect the books of account of the company and report to the government. So there is that desire to always have public accountability wherever public funds are utilized and wherever there is public interest. So I will stop there, and members put the question that Gamworks be allowed to guide us through its own position on this matter of it having either by virtue of the decision of its board to agree to submit itself to some form of public accountability, or guide us in terms of how to review its own mandate so that it will be able to escape this what we see as a necessity for it to submit itself to public accountability. I put the question that we allow Gamworks to guide us through in this debate. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those in favor say no. The ayes have it. Chair, either you or your management could take on the issues we have mentioned, elucidate more if necessary, give us new information, but ultimately we would want to come to the conclusion as the need to submit our report to the chair. Thank you.
Honorable members of this distinguished committee, we are grateful for this invitation and listened to the detailed analysis of state of affairs by the chair. And I believe this is a follow-up meeting from our previous one, where we were discussing the nature of Gamworks. I would just like to make a few points and remarks, and then I would pass the mic with the permission of the chair to our Director General to get into the details. I think as a matter of record, I think it is established that Gamworks is not a public enterprise. I don't think that is in doubt as far as the law is concerned. Public enterprise is defined by law in the Constitution and in the Act of Parliament. Gamworks does not fit into that rubric. I think that is very clear. Gamwork is a creature of the Companies Act, and it is a particular type of company because there are different types of companies. There are companies limited by shares, which are profit-making, and companies limited by guarantee, which are typically companies that exist to promote their objectives without receiving profit. That is why subscribers of Gamworks cannot, by law, even receive dividend. This is established by the Companies Act as well as the memorandum and articles of Gamworks. It is not in doubt that Gamworks was created to manage public works projects for the government. And there's a reason behind that. This was done in concert between the government of the Gambia at the time and World Bank. And as my colleague will tell you in more detail, by design, as the documentation would reveal, it was designed not to be owned and controlled by government. And this is not unique to Gambia. This is a World Bank project that saw that perhaps governments had difficulties or challenges of handling these projects. Therefore, it was deemed that these kinds of structures will be created, managed by non-government entities of integrity so that government's control and intervention is limited. So I think it is very clear what Gamwork is as far as the law is concerned. There's no doubt that their function, their main client is government. So government is a client of Gamwork. There's no doubt. I'm not so sure that just because someone is your client, like me, Sarata, I'm a lawyer, someone is my client, does not give them the right to audit my firm's accounts. I'm not so sure about that. Gamwork has its own accountability mechanism. Gamwork has members, it has its AGM that has the ultimate power over Gamwork. It has a board of directors and general members, and we have our AGMs. And at the AGM, that's where we decide what we can or cannot do in line with our memorandum and articles of association. In terms of public accountability, every single project executed by Gamwork with public funds are audited. It is a condition of the donors, be it World Bank or the Islamic Development Bank or the EU. It is a condition that all the accounts are audited by reputable auditors. And these accounts are presented and given to the Ministry of Works and Finance. So it is the case, as a matter of fact, that every single project where government funds are, where funds are intended for government, because these funds usually come from donors, every single project is actually audited. There's no doubt about that. So it is not the case that Gamwork's projects are not audited. They are audited. This is a matter of fact, and I'm sure you are in a position to ascertain this. So we obviously we are now in a different dispensation. In the past, Gamwork was subject to harassment and directives that even led to the arrest of our management. And I think now we've turned to a new page where everyone is governed by law. Gamwork is governed by law, Parliament is governed by law, this committee is governed by law. We understand the spirit and essence of public accountability, and we have no intention whatsoever of trying not to be accountable. But I would say that we are accountable to our members and to our board. Notwithstanding, public funds that have been projects that are managed by Gamwork are also accountable through another process. So I don't think the public interest, the public is disadvantaged, or there's an absence of scrutiny. Every butu, dollar, euro, or cent spent is actually accounted for. I sit on different boards, and I can tell you, in terms of corporate governance, Gamwork is famous in Paris. We have a very, very dynamic board that complies with the highest standards of corporate governance. Every meeting we have is minuted and documented. We follow our bylaws and we follow the Companies Act. We are audited as an institution. So I think I don't want to dive too much on this issue, and I think I would just like to add that the government of the Gambia's own legal advisor has clearly stated unequivocally the status of Gamwork. Gamwork can go back to its members, because we don't, as a board, don't have the power, and ask the members that in the light of this discussion, whether Gamwork wishes to voluntarily submit to the PEC. That is something that we can discuss at with our members after we have a board discussion. But as of now, with all due respect, we do not believe that under the law, despite the fact that we execute public projects, we execute projects in the public interest, we don't think that the PEC has a mandate or power to examine or scrutinize Gamwork's accounts. When it comes to the accounts of the projects, I mean, those accounts are already available to the respective line ministries, and there's no issue of those accounts being scrutinized in the interest of the public, in the public interest, to ensure that taxpayers' monies or monies loaned or granted in the interest of the public are held, accounted for. We don't have any issue with that. I think on that note, I'll pass on the mic to Mr. Gay, who will give you a more detailed analysis and genesis of where Gamwork came from and where it is, and why it is clearly a company limited by guarantee, a non-governmental company. It's not a governmental entity, even though the entities that may have connections with government, but that in itself does not make Gamwork a public enterprise. And I believe, as the name of this committee indicates, public enterprise are clearly defined by law. And I'm not so sure that the committee would dispute the fact that Gamwork is clearly not a public enterprise. And I believe the mandate of this committee, with respect, is to scrutinize public enterprises. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Then we listen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Chairman, and honorable members. Thank you for allowing me to explain in more detail what Gamwork is. I will do that. I'm going to read from a prepared text, and I have a copy of it. I don't know if you.
Yes, afterwards you submit it so that.
Yes. But before I read from the text, on my way coming here, the honorable gentleman, Mr. Ibrahim Jawara, called me to ask me whether I'm bringing along the Gamwork Act. I said, we don't have an act. Then he said, okay, then are you part of the NRA Act, Minister of Works Act, or something like that? I said, no, we are not part of any act.
Well, no, let me just.
This is just an aside.
No, I'm just helping you on that. He's very new. He's one of our senior clerks. And what we have told them is that before we start any session, let them make sure that in the file, we have the act or memorandum of association.
He did explain himself.
Yeah,
He
that's
explained.
the reason. But when he came back, I told him, no. In fact, we already have those documents in our files, and that it's just that the substantive holder is ill. Otherwise, it would not have been necessary for him to engage in that exercise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But he was very gentle in the way he interacted with me, and he's been professional, and I give him good regard. I mentioned that to buttress the point that my chairman is making about Gamwork not being a public enterprise and not being created as, to an act of parliament, because the point I'm going to make in my statements is going to reflect that. Yet, it is true, and you made the point that Gamwork's main objective is to execute projects for the public interest. And its main client, as my chairman mentioned, or benefactor, is the government of the Gambia. These things are in no doubt. Without the government of the Gambia providing the projects for Gamwork to execute, I do not think Gamwork will get to this point. But the reason why the government of the Gambia has been engaging Gamworks for over 29 years, the record speaks for itself, that we have been delivering, we didn't disappoint. We have not been disappointed. And I could get testimonials from some of your honorable members. Going back to the text, in 1993, the government of the Gambia realized the need to put in place the capacity to manage investment resources efficiently and deliver basic urban services in the context of vulnerable state of the country's economy at the time, and the employment crisis at the time from the social effects of rapid urbanization. And in this context of this need to rehabilitate the backlog of infrastructure and create employment and build the new the construction industry, the government began discussions with the World Bank on the possibility of designing a project to this effect. And the concept and objective of the project was geared towards fulfilling the growing demand for construction services in the country. In order to fulfill the objectives of the intended project, an organ had to be set up to implement the proposed project. And this was how the setting up of Gamwork was conceived. The government of the Gambia, with the Minister of Justice and the World Bank, decided to commission a legal study of the institutional settings of Gamwork in order to set out the legal arrangements ensuring the proposed entity conforms to the existing laws of the Gambia. The proposed project, this is the very first project of Gamworks, was the Public Works and Capacity Building Project, PWCBP, as we have it for short. And the theory pronounced by the government for the legal study to establish Gamworks indicated that the implementation of the project will be entrusted to an executing agency which will operate as a private entity. It went further to state that a non-governmental agency designed to function as a delegate contract manager would be created to implement the project. Additionally, the legal study made it crystal clear that the agency's legal framework is designed to provide operational autonomy through an appropriate statutes, bylaws, agreements, and manual of procedures. And we have the terms of reference of the legal study we will submit to you for your records, which goes into detail. It's good. All of these documents are government documents that I'm going to submit to you. And on February 10th, 1993, the acting Secretary General at the time and head of civil service wrote to the Solicitor General and Legal Secretary, Attorney General's Chambers, and Minister of Justice, requesting for a review of the legal framework proposed for the operationalization of the Public Works and Capacity Building Project and the creation of Gamwork. The letter explicitly requested for the review of the documents relating to the legal framework, given that the agency is deemed as a not-for-profit, non-governmental organization, its anticipated financial and administrative autonomy, the policy and procedures manual are as guidelines for the agency's operational procedures, and the board as an apex body of the agency vis-a-vis the powers vested in the office of the Director General. I am quoting the letter from the Secretary General, the Acting Secretary General at the time, and we will submit that letter. This letter by the Acting Attorney General, Secretary General mentioned that the creation of the agency was scheduled for April of 1993, and thus the need to expedite the legal opinion on the establishment. The World Bank, who was assisting the government in the creation of the agency, wrote in April of 1993 to inquire about the status of the legal status and the government of the Gambia's position on the matter, made it abundantly clear that while the technical solution, because there are other issues like the manual procedures and other things, the operations of Gamworks, can be tailored adequately, the position of the World Bank is that the autonomy of the agency is not negotiable. We will submit that also. This letter was followed by another fax message from the office of the President of 14th of April to the World Bank's financial specialist overseeing the project transmitting the outcome of the Attorney General's review. And according to the review, the agency, Gamwork, will be recommended for incorporation under Section 21 of the Companies Act, as the agency's objectives seem to fall under the purview of a particular section of the Act pertaining to charitable organizations. We will submit this letter also. This letter from the AG to the Secretary General, dated 14 April, simply confirms the outcome of the review to establish the legal status of the agency. The letter indicates that it is evident from the attached statutes, the articles of agreement of the proposed agency, that this body is not a profit-making body, and that it is to be set up for the sole purpose of having public works and services executed on behalf of public bodies and associations recognized to be in the public interest. And this is the point that the Honorable Chairman was making, us working, executing projects for the public interest. And this is still what Gamwork is doing. The review of the Attorney General's Chambers determined that the objects of the proposed agency and its institutional setup clearly falls within the purview of Section 21, subsection 1 of the Companies Act 1955. And Section 20 deals with the establishment of charitable institutions. From the recommendations of the review, the Attorney General's Chambers put the process of preparing the relevant incorporation documents, including the Memorandum and Declaration of Association of Gamwork, which we have submitted before, we will do further submission. In 1993, again, Gamwork was incorporated after all of this process as a company limited by guarantee and not having share capital with NGO status under the Companies Act. We are not saying it's an NGO, but de facto NGO. The members of the agency are the Gambia Bar Association, Gambia Association of Local Government Authorities, GALGA, the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Gambia Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, TANGO, and the National Youth Authority. Mr. Chairman, if I may point out that GALGA is just a club, an association, and not a government body. It might be formed by chairmen and mayors and from the local government authority, but it's just a club. Gamwork's agency, as an autonomous entity, went on to sign a framework agreement with the government of the Gambia, signed by the President of the Republic on August 1999, and the Director General. The framework governs the relationship of the government of the Gambia and Gamwork, spelling out the obligations of both parties and the benefits granted to Gamwork. Submit. It is pertinent to note that the concept of delegated contract manager has been adopted as a model to execute development projects in many African countries, particularly French-speaking African countries, since the early 90s. So Gamwork is not unique. The pioneers were in Senegal, Agitip, and we have them in Niger, Nigertip, Burkina Faso, Faso Bara, Mauritania, Amestic, Benin, Agitur and Agiter, Mali, Agitip Mali, and many others that you will find in Togo, Burundi, Madagascar, Djibouti, and on and on and on and on. That's the background to Gamwork. And since 1993, the whole country will bear us witness that we have been doing a fine job meeting our mandate and objects. And Mr. Chairman, we do not have any monopoly with regards to public works projects. There are many public works projects that are being executed by many executing agencies within ministries and outside of government. Even within the UN systems, UNOPS is implementing projects. We have a government, and it's not a local entity. Even the UNDP with the PACD infrastructure project. So there is no monopoly. We may be given opportunities to execute a project here and there, but we are not the sole body to execute infrastructure projects. We are witnessing the OIC roads, which is infrastructure, and Gamwork does not have one single input in that infrastructure as big as they are in that infrastructure project. Our comparative advantage is our management fees for operations happen to be competitive. Every project normally has operating cost. And we always happen to be matching or being even below the operating cost. Because other entities may be driven by a profit, but we are not profit driven. We are just looking at the public interest, trying to just make sure our day-to-day operations are covered, and this is how our fees are tied to the operating cost of projects. As my chairman has explained, and you've said that we have been compelled in the past to comply with the PAC and submit accounts. And when we did, for the period that we did, I don't think there was anything questionable with regards to our accounts. However, around 2015, I guess by then, 2015, 2016, things were getting to a crescendo in this country with regards to the old dispensation. So we came to the PAC to explain these things that we are explaining, but not even getting to this point. And it got to a point that maybe they didn't like our faces. I'm just joking. They reported us to the office of the president that we have been flouting the Constitution. And the president asked the police service to arrest us and investigate us, and also set up a task force to find out what's going on, what the National Assembly reported. The police, of course, arrested the top management and all project managers, and took statements and seized our travel documents, and did their investigations. And in their investigations, they went through our audit, they went through everything beyond even what they were asked, and they didn't find anything untoward with regards to our operation or our activities as reported. The task force also did their investigation and went back to the executive and explained that what they found is different from what was reported. In that process, the task force asked the Solicitor General to give a legal opinion on the operations of Gamwork and whether Gamwork should report to the PAC. And they prepared the legal opinion and submitted to the chairman at the time of the task force, the Honorable Abdullah Job at the time, explaining explicitly what we are and that we have no business coming to the PAC. Yet, with all of that said, when the National Assembly Select Committee on Projects, I don't know if that's the name, ask us about our projects, we comply, we come here and meet with them and then go out with them and show them the projects that we are doing. We think that is appropriate, and anytime they call on us, because we have nothing to hide, we think we deliver all the time, and we can always take them. We took them all the way to Kunda. We took them all the way to Bajakunda, showing them the projects that we are doing all over the country, and we are happy to come here at any time as part of our accountability, show the Parliament the projects that they have ratified, where they are and how they are doing. The Gambia Public Procurement Authority also consulted the Solicitor General about non-compliance of Gamworks with regards to GPA Act and rules. And the same, the Solicitor General responded, and we have a copy, explaining explicitly what Gamworks is about. So I think it is very clear, as Mr. Chairman, my chairman has said, we, within the law, want to abide within the law and are not taking a position that we don't want to see you, we are not interested in dealing with you. That is not the position of the agency, whether at management or at board level or even at membership level. I do not know, as Mr. Chairman, you asked the question, should we change Gamworks or should we leave it alone? And my question is, change for what? For the better? Or is it change just to have control? Because if it's accountability, is, as my chairman has already explained, the accountability is already there. If it's for control, I'm asking what kind of control? Is it the control of resources? Or is it the resource allocations, where they are? Do we, over the years, believe that there are certain things that we can make better? I believe so. And if the National Assembly is interested in supporting Gamworks, and I'm sure that none of the National Assembly members are interested in dismantling Gamworks just for the sake of it, because we implement projects in every constituency that these National Assembly members belong to. So I believe that they would rather strengthen and empower Gamworks to be doing more. If that is the object of change, I am all in for it. I'm all in for it. And I think my chairman and the board will support change for strengthening and empowerment of Gamworks so that it can deliver on its mandate and meet the objects of its memorandum of association. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive. On your hand, Board Chair, we have your intervention combined with what we have guided members is number one, is the legal statement. And we have had the chairman of the board in the Constitution and the Public Enterprise Act. He does not see how Gamworks would be classified as a public enterprise. element ought to be taken note of. Number two, we've heard from management that Gamwork evolved from 1993 to be an institution progressively moving towards serving the public interest by executing projects for the government of the Republic of the Gambia. It's indicated that in April 1993, there was the aim to define the legal status, and that the chambers had been given the responsibility to do that. But he mentions things like coming up with statutes and things of that nature to govern the operations, the establishment and operation of Gamwork. Well, apparently, as he has rightly said, we do not have any statute, no act at the moment that indicates in any way the legal personality of Gamwork. So the question is, should there have been a statute? Is it necessary after an operation of 29 years? These are the questions. That's why we say whether something was missed, and if you don't feel it is missed, well, we are looking for your professional guidance. It's not what this committee says, but what you say, to be able to strengthen and consolidate the independence and operational capacity of Gamwork, and what will free it from any form of interference, since that was the original objective, to create an institution free from interference in its operations, so it can operate efficiently. That's what we are saying. So don't in any way have or entertain in your mind that there is any conspiracy against Gamwork. I'm sure that's what you are saying.
No.
Again, no, it's all right.
Far from that.
There to understand you, making you to have a steady mind that we are moving on a very steady course,
Yes.
guided by statutes and facts, so that ultimately our recommendation will be found to be fit for purpose.
And that's our plea.
So in essence then, we are hearing you and listening to you, and we hope that as we progress together in conception and conception building on the issue itself. Yes, we have followed you as they struggle to come up with the legal framework. Okay. Chair, what we see is 2003, the memorandum establishing the legal framework that you now have. But we have not seen anything prior to that established a legal framework. Do you have anything on record with the study that the Attorney General was making at the time, that they came up with some form of legal framework for Gamwork? Or do we rely entirely on the 2003 Memorandum of Understanding to be the basis of the legal framework?
I think, thank you very much, is determined exclusively by the memorandum and article of association. The framework agreement defines the relationship between Gamworks and the government. I think as a point of clarification, and with your permission too, I would like to perhaps clarify, you mentioned statutes. That statute is not talking about statutes or laws from Parliament. It's talking about the governing laws of the entity. So there's no, it's not like there's anything missing. It's just the nomenclature, statute, bylaws. An article and memorandum is a statute of a company. So it's being used in that sense, not in the sense of legislation. So it was never, if you read through the document, it was never envisaged that there will be a statute or legislation. It was the governing rules, regulations, and statutes of the entity, not that there should be another law. I mean, if you read the whole thing, the result that is precisely against that, just as a matter of clarification.
Well, let's accept that. Let's accept it as a premise. After the other part of you,
Yes.
which I respect. Go ahead. I did not.
May I pass the mic to my
Yeah,
colleague?
you know
Yes.
that framework agreement.
Yeah, that's what I want to answer.
Yes.
From 1993. And the 2003 version that we are submitting is because in 1993 there were 3 members, and in 2002 or 1 there were 5 members.
You know, we are looking for the details.
Yes.
And you know, we are asking questions. You don't have
Yes.
to answer them now.
No, I just want to explain.
Just allow me. You can always say that I don't have the documents now, but when we go back, we'll send you the document. Because we are looking for the details. As you can see, we've gone very far.
Yes.
And you are doing a good job in giving us information. We're just looking at the text. You've said a legal framework. So that framework agreement is some form of agreement.
Yes.
And therefore that is material to what we are searching for.
Yes.
You talked about the evolution of Gamworks, what was in the mind of government as it evolved. We must not also reject the fact that it is government's brainchild,
Yes.
even though
Yes.
the child may become independent.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, okay.
This we totally agree. No, I was just trying to explain with the article of memorandum and article of association. The reason why you see the 2003 is because by then we were regularizing that there are now 5 members instead of 3 members. So the articles, the write-up did not change. Only the last page, which shows the signatures, changed. Now, we have been looking in our records for
Are you saying that in 1993 there was a memorandum of article of association?
Yeah, it's the same one. The only thing that has changed is the signature page.
Yes, even if it changed, there was one.
Yes.
And it's something that you can submit to us, isn't it?
Yeah,
You can trace your file and get us the copy of that original one in 1993. If you are not sure, please.
I am not too sure because
Okay,
we have been looking for that page, the last page where we have the signatures, and it's been difficult to go through our archives to get that page.
You've been guiding the process very well.
Yeah.
And I think you know our function. We really want to gather the facts and present the facts as we gather them. So I don't think there is anything wrong for us to suspend and then allow him to go into that, and you also provide the necessary guidance. What we need to know is the framework, legal framework from 1993 to 2003, before what we now have became the material document. What was the legal framework before that? Because we see the mind of government evolving, and we want to know legally how it evolved to be where we are now considering. If we have that, then we finish our gap, because we still have that gap.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with respect, I think it's in order to have a complete genesis of where it started to where it is. Even though legally, from a legal point of view, where it is defines status. But I think for the purpose of understanding the mind of government and the genesis, I do understand your desire, legitimately so, to obtain, perhaps there may have been an amendment, of the memorandum. The one that they may have been, and I've not seen it. There's possibly a first memorandum that preceded this one. It's possible. I have never seen it before, because I can see that there's a board resolution that actually admitted new members. So prior to the admission of new members, what was the status? I think that is what you would like to know. I think what we can do is we can go to the company's registry, and perhaps, because all these are public record documents between the company registry and the Ministry of Justice. There might be a copy. So what we can promise you is we will endeavor to find this document, and we'll do our utmost to find this document and provide to you so that you can also see the context of where we are and where we are. We have no objection to that at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To see how we can strengthen an institution which is delivering, but to move it from all suspicion and all issues of accountability, transparency. I think that always one for the institution. We move more and more towards that framework. Thank you very much. I think it's a good talking point, members, that we take opportunity and allow them to give us more information. If we were not there, we don't know what the mind of the makers were, so that once we know, we can assist them more and more and build up something new out of this that others will also emulate. So let's not just see this as a process of vetting. We hope to be progressive in our thinking, and maybe we will discover how to give land being raised from the angle of parliament or even the executive that you experienced in the past. How can you prevent such a thing from occurring is really our objective. Thank you very much, members. Anybody can propose adjournment, and we leave Gamwork to contact us anytime you have, and if you don't have also, just tell us, because we'll have one more session, and then we'll come up with our answer of it is available, was not available.
A week.
A week.
1 week. All the other documents are here,
Yeah.
except the 1993.
And please get us that. So what? Yes. Could we have it Friday? Friday 20.
What date? 19.
Yes, Wednesday is 19.
Wednesday is 19.
19, please.
Friday is 20.
Oh, so can we say, because 19 is, so could we say 20? Is it possible by 12?
Yes.
Yeah.
What time?
Can we say 11? We'll get back to you.
Okay.
We'll get back to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to hear that. Okay, members, go ahead. Review it. Motion.
I move a motion that we adjourn till
Yes.
Monday.
Yes, we just move that we adjourn until Monday, 20th of